See if it refreshes on the website. See if it refreshes on the website. Looks like we have started. Wonderful. Okay. I am calling to order the July 8th Anime Twin Cities board meeting. We are. I forgot to mute the audio on the stream, so that was very confusing for a second. Okay. Calling to order the meeting at 7:01 p.m. Please check the description of the meeting to find the agenda for this month. You can follow along. And these meetings are counted for attendance regarding voting rights. Please fill out the Google form in the description if you would like to be counted. And with that said, we can go ahead and go on to the first item, which is recapping off-cycle board actions and votes. We did go ahead and select a new special events coordinator. They might look a little familiar because it's Allie! Yay! They did apply, and we interviewed her, and we all agreed that she was a great fit for the position. Is that something we need to vote on?
I mean, I think we did it for all the previous coordinators, so we should probably do it for this coordinator.
I think we're trying something new this meeting where Nick's gonna say the thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to go through the motions. All right, so I motion to make Allie Castle the new special events coordinator for Anime Twin Cities. Can I get a second?
I will.
Me too.
All right. You got a second? Or go on. Or...
Okay, and then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and that is the only off-cycle action that we took this month. Then we have planned discussions from scheduling visiting parties / partners. We do not have any of those. So we'll go ahead and move on to coordinator updates. I did switch it up a little bit this month. We're going to start with finance and Jeanette. Yay.
Yay. All right. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Currently in our checking account, we have $340,032.72. In our education fund, we have $3,098.45. And in our community fund, we have $14,507.63. And that ends my report. Thank you.
Very much. And then just one question. So I know we did go ahead and get the funds over to Toshokan. Have we done any of the other charitable giving that we talked about last month? I don't think we ever actually wrote it in an email to you.
Correct. So okay, I have email communications for approvals, but I have not gotten amounts and who to send them to, or that hasn't been arranged yet.
We will get that figured out.
Thank you.
All right. Then we can go ahead and go on to the Anime Detour Coordinator, JC.
Hello, Anime Detour Coordinator, also known as Chairman. Our next staff meeting is coming up on Saturday, July 26th. Should be 2 to 4. I think there's already been an email out, but we'll make sure we get an email out, that it's on the Discord, all that good stuff, as reminders to people. But that is still about 2.5 weeks away. And sorry if there was a plan to talk about this. I'm just going to talk about it now. We were at Pride. ATC and Anime Detour combined had a table there. It was really successful. It was really fun. A lot of people did come up to us. We sold a few tickets, and we definitely gave a lot of people our QR code for more information. And then I know that Allie did some good work at Convergence as well, which was this past weekend, getting her name out there. And Geek Partnership Society also handed out some flyers for our convention while at Convergence. So I think we're doing a good job hustling and getting Anime Detour and ATC out there. So yay.
Wonderful. Then next up on the agenda, I have charities. Jacob, do you have any updates for us?
Not at the moment, no. Not really. No major updates on my end.
Then next up is communications. Michaela could not join this evening, but she did send an email saying she did not have any updates for us today. Then I will go ahead and pass it over to Allie for special events.
Yeah, so obviously I've just gotten started with this. Been about 3 weeks. So we've already gone ahead and done Twin Cities Pride. I'll overlap a little bit with JC on that. Did a joint table for Anime Detour, Anime Twin Cities. It went great. We handed out all of our flyers and pretty much all of our cards for staff recruitment. We could have handed out even more than we had. Handed out a bunch of stickers, got our name out there. Had a lot of people who were very happy to see us out there for our first time ever at Pride. And big thanks to the group who loaned us the tent that we had so that it didn't blow away in that storm overnight. That was great. We've got KitsuneCon coming up this coming weekend. I think Hope's kind of taking the lead on that one. So that'll be great to have our people out there. Did not have an official presence at Convergence this past weekend, but GPS was kind enough to put out flyers for us with their stuff, and they'll be carrying those around to other events that they're at and having us as part of their display of flyers for local events. Coming up next month, we will have Oban Festival. So I'll be starting to recruit help for that and get us ready to go for that. Get our table set up and everything for that soon. And then in, I think, September, let me double check the date real fast here. Yep, in September, Inbound Brew Co. approached us about doing an anime day with joint event with them and Anime Fusion. So we're going to go participate in that. We'll get part of the money from drinks sold that day. We'll be able to do some different events with them. It's going to be sort of a little mini anime convention at their brewery, and it should be lots of fun. So we're recruiting help for that too right now. And lots of other things already starting to get lined up that will be coming forward soon. If you are interested in joining up with the special events team, you can send me an email, which I believe is specialevents@animetwincities.org. Like I said, it's been only 3 weeks, and it's been a crazy 3 weeks. Is it not?
Well, I think any of them will go.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, send me an email, and let's get you set up so you can help out with all these cool events that we've got coming up. I'm excited to get us back into doing all the extra goodies that we used to do once upon a time.
It's special events at animedetour.com.
At animedetour.com?
TwinCities.org also works.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that one makes more
All
sense.
roads lead back to that.
Send special events at something, and it'll probably get here.
Mhm.
That's it.
Wonderful. Okay. So then next on the agenda, we have a 15-minute break. I think we can motion to vote to skip that break. All in favor? Then the main topic for the evening is a while ago, we received this lovely form for rental requests that we would like to start being able to offer to other people because we have a lot of equipment and it just sits in storage all year. So we'd like to offer it to people that we know will take care of it and utilize it properly and that sort of thing. So I'm going to share my screen, and there's a couple of us in this document right now, but I think So we had kind of wanted to try to work on this 11-page document off meeting, but with Pride and the 4th of July and Convergence, we just did not have time. So we're going to do it during the meeting because that's what meetings are for, to get work done.
Yeah.
So I think we just need to go like one paragraph at a time and figure out if we like it, if we don't like it, what needs to change, that sort of thing. Does that sound good?
Sure.
All right. I'm just going to start. I'm not going to read it out loud. It's 11 pages, so we'll just go from here.
Would you like me to read it out loud? At least
I feel like we
part of it.
probably should read it out loud. I am okay
Please.
with reading it.
Yeah, I would just do like one section at a time.
Yeah. I mean, I'll start. I'll read the introduction and scope.
Okay.
Previously, Anime Detour would loan and rent out its various pieces of equipment to other conventions in the area. This was primarily focused on our tech equipment, including audio and video equipment, panel room technology, and other items. As the largest convention in the area, we have a particularly strong position in the Twin Cities to guide and assist other conventions in the area as a rising tide raises all ships. A program which allows the smaller conventions in our area to access technology, equipment, and other resources would reflect well on Anime Detour in the area and beyond. The benefits of this are obvious, but of particular note is a sharing of network contacts and even staff members, as well as the potential to loan equipment from other conventions in kind. I believe it is important for us to begin this policy once again while noting that some changes need to be made to the specific process that we executed, which is written a little bit strange, but we can fix that later. Renting and loaning out equipment comes with significant liability, especially for expensive technology and gear, and therefore policy must be established to minimize the risk and liability to Anime Twin Cities when in possession by another group. This document covers a justification for the return of the policy, provides a first draft of such a policy, and notes the equipment that has particular potential for loaning out. It also provides a draft of specific documents, including the rental request form and rental agreement. I'm confident in this first draft, but I do believe that the specific rules, numbers, and other determinations should be discussed, adjusted, and approved by the organization at large.
Partnerships. Anime Detour has existing relationships with multiple of our local conventions, including Anime Fusion, Furry Migration, Twin Cities Con, VGM Con, and even more beyond our state. And I believe that these relationships would be improved with rental and loan options provided formally to these partners. To that end, I would propose a formalization of partnerships into these 3 primary levels. Level 1, primary partners, our closest partner conventions. Providing these partners with equipment at little to no direct cost would improve their event and provide for the continued strong relationship that has been fostered. Equipment would be loaned to the conventions at no direct cost, but still requiring the convention to sign rental agreement contracts for all equipment loaned, holding them responsible for damages and replacement if needed. 2, secondary partners, conventions with whom our relationship is still developing. Perhaps there is a significant demographic or schedule overlap with this convention that makes loaning and renting equipment to them difficult. Equipment could be rented to these conventions with a deposit equivalent to 5% of the cost of the equipment, which would be returned to the organization on return of equipment. A rental agreement contract will still be signed, holding them responsible for all damages and replacement as needed. And deposit fees can be covered by exchange in kind from the organization, such as through hotel and table costs at their convention. And 3rd, establishing partners. A newer convention or a newer relationship for Anime Detour, these organizations have not necessarily earned the trust of our organization, but the relationship can be developed through material means of rental equipment. Equipment should be rented to these conventions with a deposit equivalent to 10% the cost of the equipment, which will be returned to the organization on return of the equipment. A rental agreement contract will still be signed, holding them responsible for all damages and replacement as needed. On return of equipment, a 1% of rental value damaged and maintenance fee will be deducted from the deposit. Deposits and maintenance fees can be covered by exchange in kind from the organization, such as through hotel and table costs at their convention.
I think we need to read through the whole document before we start working on it. I think we can start working on it. So like the introduction didn't really need any work. did it. It was just, I mean, it's just an introduction. I
Right.
don't think it even needs to be part of the official policy. It's just for us.
Yeah.
So I know when we started talking about this before, I don't love these numbers that are on here or how complicated this is. I think if we're going to be renting, it never should be free because it is something that I mean, yeah, we're not paying our staff, but it costs a staff person time and energy to go to the locker, get something, make sure they know how to use it, hand it over, and then take it back and make sure it's this is all stuff that we should be compensated for. It shouldn't just be free. Now the question is what the dollar amount should be. And my problem is I don't know what the cost of the equipment is. Is the equipment all right? Are we going to get $10 for something that costs $100, or are we talking we have something that costs $5,000, so we're going to get $500 for it? I don't know, and then that feels like, well, $500 is really expensive. Shouldn't we just have a flat rate fee for certain items? I don't.
I mean, that makes sense to me as well. I mean, I know this is something that we need to go through. However, the primary people who are behind this document were not here. Which is okay. I mean, schedules be what they will. So, Lori.
Although this is a draft, so we could say these are the things we need to know from the people who are more involved. For example, I'm looking at this and I would like sort of a fee table idea. What does it cost to get a small speaker from us? What does it cost to get a medium speaker? What do the microphone cost? Something like that. So not only would we have an idea of what kind of financial output we're looking at, but anybody who would be considering renting from us would have an idea of what's available and what it's going to cost them. And I agree that we do need to charge something, and maybe a slightly higher deposit since it is going to be returned, especially for the newer conventions where we don't want to be in a situation where we loan a bunch of stuff out to someone who then wrecks it and can't afford to pay anything back because their convention folded.
Yeah, I know I'm not formally on the board, but if I'm okay to talk, and I didn't, write this either, but I did talk to Cass a fair bit about it. I do think upping the deposit percentages makes sense, and that may be all that we want to have in the formal policy, because I do think breaking out sort of rental rates for individual pieces should be something that the department that owns it does, and also will not always reflect the total price on a percentage basis, because there are things that are super expensive but we still want to loan them if we feel comfortable. And it's the kind of thing that we might also tweak that depending on who it is and what our relationship is. So yeah, I think maybe setting the tiers and setting the deposit percentage does make sense in the broad policy, and then those details would have to be worked out more individually.
So when you're saying deposit, you mean it would be a refundable deposit?
Right.
Versus,
I mean, I do think the way that this frames it as it's a refundable deposit less whatever the rental fee is, right? We get all of the money up front and then we give back most of it.
Allie has your hand up.
yes.
Allie.
Sorry, Christina's kind of semi-muted. I couldn't really hear her. Yeah, I keep seeing your mouth moving but not hearing anything, Christina. Sorry. So I want to mention, I kind of made a lot of my thoughts on this clear while I was on the board. I will note we need to be very realistic about deposit timelines and what kind of inspection we can expect for these kind of things to make sure that they're not damaged. Many of you know that we had some equipment that was returned The deposit was returned to the group. No one ever opened the bins, and when they were opened several months after the deposit was returned, equipment was literally destroyed. And this was equipment that we were planning to resell that now was no longer in a sellable condition. Wasn't even in a usable condition. It was literally physically broken to a point where it was no longer usable. We can't have that continuing to happen. That doesn't do anyone good. That lets other conventions basically run over us. And that leaves us stranded without equipment when we open up the bins last minute thinking that someone's checked it previous to this and find out that what we need to make our event happen has been completely ruined. So if we're going to do this, we need to be very realistic on what we can actually handle. We can't just do it out of the goodness of our hearts and hope that it's going to work out. That didn't work last time.
I don't think this, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I don't think this rental policy is written in the idea of we're going to rent to anyone who asks for it. I think we're only going to rent to the people that we're comfortable renting to because we already have a good working relationship with them with all the different crossover between different cons that we have.
The issue with the partner who did trash the equipment was someone who we'd rented to previously, someone who we thought we had a good relationship with, and yet one of their department heads was incredibly careless with our equipment and caused significant damage to it in the thousands of dollars range.
Yep. Your opinion has been noted. Lori?
I am going to let you know that in the chat there is a comment about making sure that the group that we are renting to has insurance that will cover damage, and or finding out how renting will affect our insurance, because our insurance may have things to say about the fact that we are letting this equipment be rented out and whether it will cover it.
Good point. Good point. Jeanette?
So kind of to piggyback off what Allie was mentioning is, I think if we write into our policy a grace period of how long before we actually give the deposit back so that we have inspection, I would also suggest somewhere in there of how when the equipment's going out, whether it's a picture, whether you sign, we understand this equipment is in this condition. This is what's obviously the packing list would be part of it. And then when it comes back, you're going to have to make sure there's someone who's trained to know how to check it back in or check it in within that certain amount of time that it's been returned. And that's because that's somewhere in there you're determining damage at some point or usability. So I don't see it in all the other rest of the document of a grace period or you won't get your deposit back for a week or there's got to be some amount of time written in there. So that you can inspect and make sure it works. And then, I think part of when you're making the reservation for somebody, you need to make sure you have staff available to do the pickup and the return, or two separate people in their time.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree that there should be a time frame noted when it comes to that. I'm not seeing, like what Jeanette said, I'm not seeing anything currently in the document. So it's definitely something that we could add to the contract policy portion of it and have that be fleshed out. Do we want to, we've sort of gone over the partnership aspect of it with comments. Do we want to go through the contract portion of it?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Contract policy, terms and definitions. The equipment owned by Anime Twin Cities, otherwise the organization, as used and operated in Anime Detour, the event, may be rented or loaned to other conventions partners, as determined by the rules within this policy. Partners are determined in 3 levels of relationship, noting different cost expectations and allowances for each level, while also noting equal expectations of words are hard. Remuneration and reparations of damages for any damaged or lost equipment. Renting in this policy refers to equipment that is temporarily given to the partner in exchange for a monetary deposit or exchange in kind, and may require a fee of maintenance on completion of the rental agreement. And wow, sorry, Christina, you highlighted and it threw me off. Is subject to a rental agreement. Can you move your mouse, please? Thank you. Loaning in this policy refers to equipment that is temporarily given to a partner for no deposit or fee, but is still subject to a rental agreement. And the process and responsible parties. This process shall be managed by a number of parties within the organization and the event. All communications regarding rental and loan requests are to be directed to the head of the logistics department of the event. The request will then be discussed with the head of the convention relations of the event, as well as the head of the department responsible for the requested equipment, in order to determine the relevant partnership level and rules. Once the request is made, the logistics department head or designee will reply to the request, noting the partnership level, required deposit, and any expected fees, and attach a draft of the contract. If the partner accepts the terms, the rental agreement is sent to the following parties for written approval. Also included will be a manifest of all of requested equipment, which notes a total value of equipment, any submitted information by the requesting partner, and any previous rental requests, approved or otherwise. Those people being the logistics department head, division head overseeing logistics, equipment owner, department head, and the ATC treasurer. Once the parties above have issued their approval, the agreement is sent to the chair of the convention for signatory approval. After the agreement has been signed, the logistics department head will work with the partner to make a plan for pickup and return of the equipment. A copy of the signed agreement, as well as this policy, will be furnished to the partner in addition to the equipment, and any final determination or approval of any part of this policy and any rental agreement will be made by the chair of the convention. I'm going to pause there.
Okay. I'm like, this is a lot.
So
yes, I'm coming back to, do we really want tiers?
I'm okay with them as long as how we define the tiers is very well defined and universally applied. Otherwise, I would
Probably
prefer
do that.
just to be, yeah, exactly. Otherwise, I would prefer it just to be. I know that we want to help out like smaller cons and cons that give something back to us, but I feel like that can be covered in the you can pay some of your fees through hotel and table costs. So if you're a small con and maybe you can't afford straight up the rental, you give us rooms and for roadshow, stuff like that. But I do, yeah. So again, the hard part about having the tiers is how do you define and how do you universally?
How do we define who's your closest partner? It's like, well,
Yeah.
I'm on the chair team and my husband is on the chair team of this other one, so they're our closest partner. And I'm like, well, that's kind of conflict of interest-y, you know?
Yeah.
we have that policy now. So
Yeah.
it might be prudent then to just sort of maybe just do 2 tiers instead of
People we know and people we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, kind of people.
And if you know, I always get frustrated with this sort of thing because it's like so much of how conventions work is just like, well, we get along with them, so that is our closer partner, you know.
Right.
But yeah, if we don't want to do that, then yeah, I think the 2 tiers make sense, and then I think it should just be strictly like if everyone is tier 1, and if you do this successfully twice, then you're tier 2.
I like that idea. I was about to suggest that, where it's everyone starts off with you are coming in base level, 0 trust. You build trust moving forward as you go along, sort of situation where it's not, you've rented you were good renting with us 7 years ago or whenever it is that we had the rental.
We've table swapped with you, but that doesn't mean anything.
Exactly. Like, just because we've done XYZ with you previously doesn't mean that you get a pass automatically into a trusted partner strictly because of that reason. So I would be more comfortable if we adjusted it so that that tier would be like indicating that everybody would start at ground zero, essentially, and then work their way up the pyramid.
Yep.
And yeah, I guess the only other thing that I would say about it too is if they successfully return our stuff, that's a point. Also, if they lend us stuff, that maybe is a point too, since that is kind of part of the idea here too.
Yeah.
Right. But as for the process and responsible party part of what I read, that I have no issues with. Aside from what Jeanette noted, we're making sure we add in a timeline for when we review the equipment to when we give back a deposit, if at all. I have no issues with what Cass and Bruce decided on for that portion of the policy, personally. Anybody else? Group effort here.
I think I've said everything that I've thought so far.
Cool.
Trying to type.
Yep. Let me know when you're good to go. Allie.
I was just going to mention that there has actually been a fair amount of discussion amongst us non-board members in here over in the YouTube chat, if anyone wants to review that and
cool.
give the highlights.
I don't have that pulled up, unfortunately. I probably
So, okay, the person that was talking about insurance says maybe like deposit be returned based on the bill. Yep, okay, that was that part. Department gets the final say over whether their equipment is included in the program. And I think that's part of it. Oh god. I clicked on a name and now I have a top fans thing. Okay. Yeah, we don't want it to be free because then people won't respect the equipment. Give stuff people for free so they won't give it back.
Let's see.
So for tiers, so we're like, okay, so everyone's starting from 0 and we will work up to, I just put unknown tier and trusted tier, but those are terrible names. So we
that can be adjusted later.
Yeah.
Something like new relationship, established relationship, or something silly. We can think about it.
That's much better. Can I just edit it? So part of this was, so it goes through logistics. It goes through convention relations. It theoretically goes through the department or the division lead, and then the treasurer, and then the chair of the convention. And having a lot is good, but like, are these the right?
Well, I feel in how I read it is that the logistics department head and their division head overseeing logistics and the equipment owner, the equipment owner department, so whoever owns that equipment in the tech for the most part, they would sort of be like a group effort sort of situation. Like the division head is going through it, but it's not necessarily, I don't know how I want to phrase it in my brain. Yeah, Sally?
Yeah, I would say they're not, the division head's probably not making the arrangements or negotiating them. They're just sort of overseeing it and making sure everyone that's involved, that needs to be involved, is involved.
Allie?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned this a little bit in the side chat over with the YouTube chat too, but I think it needs to be, if we're using a group like that, it does need to be unanimous. I don't think, let's go back to the damaged radios that I had to sort through. I, because of that, am not inclined as being on, I lost my video at some point. I'm not inclined being, one of the heads of ops responsible for the new radios to loan those out after seeing how badly the old radios were damaged. I would not be happy if we had a situation where I could say, no, I don't want to rent out the radios, but
Right.
then,
So that is addressed.
some general logistics head could say,
No, that is the language that's in there, Allie. I don't know if you heard that part or not, but
I think I might have missed that part. But yeah, I want to make sure that everyone has to agree. You can't have, the logistics head, department, division lead, and treasurer all vote down the equipment owner and say, well, we like this group, so we're going to give them the radios, even though you said no.
Right. That is addressed. It says once all the parties have issued their approval, the equipment is sent to the chair for the convention for signatory approval. So everybody, all 4 of those people need to approve first before it gets signed off.
That's what I wanted to be sure was in there.
And there's also the language elsewhere too that the final decision is with the department that owns the equipment, which I think is correct.
Yes.
I like that too. So that makes me feel better too.
Like that's really where the veto lives is whose equipment is.
That's
right.
There.
Jeanette.
So I'm wondering, is there anywhere in the contract, I don't really see it, but I mean, I would hope that the equipment owner is trained on the equipment, the person we're loaning it to, or their staff. Is there some reassurance that the people using it are trained and know how to use the equipment properly? That's because, for us staffers, we had to do radio training, and as an example. So something like that. Is there some way to put a guarantee of whoever's handling this equipment all knows how to use it correctly? I don't know. I mean, to minimize damage, I think that's where I'm looking at this part of the agreement. Like, oh, sure, we can agree, we can rent to you, but then how do we have any assurance that the people using it or the person picking it up even is trained?
All partners.
I don't know if that's in there later or if it's just, like any damage. I don't know. This is red. I feel like, expecting them to know how to use it when they want to rent it is just the default.
Right, but I mean, if it's not in there, it would be good to have it in there just so that we can be like, hey, look, it's in writing. You agreed to this. You said that you would know what you're doing when you rented it from us, and you lied. So, if definitely something to just add in the notes. I don't see it either. I mean, there's talk of parties will inspect the equipment and establish condition of the equipment of the receipt of the partner, with both parties signing a copy of inspection report. But yeah, it doesn't say necessarily anything in regards to if those people are familiar with the equipment and know what they're doing with the equipment.
I thought I saw something earlier that implied that, but yeah, we can put it in the notes and then come back to it.
If you had said the final determination or approval of any part of this policy and any rental agreement will be made by, it says the chair of the convention, not the department head.
Oh, well, I would suggest tweaking that.
So just like if the partner accepts the terms, then it goes to these 4 people for approval. Once they've all issued their approval, and they send it to the chair. And then, it starts happening. But then any final determination or approval, so it's like, does that mean the chair can override one of these people saying no? Or does that just mean the
Definitely
chair
not.
has to be okay with it?
Where is that language of the final determination?
It's
Blah blah blah.
right above the rules and determinations of the agreement.
No.
I have it.
The one that said the head of the department.
Well, it says the equipment owner department head is one of the 4 that needs to have, everybody needs their approval first.
Yeah, no, but I thought there was a different line.
I think what it is we were initially thinking that this final one, going any final determination or approval of any part of this policy and any rental agreement, even it says be made by the chair of the convention. I think we were, without reading it, assuming that it said the department head, and it doesn't.
Okay, so if that's the case, I would switch those. Put the chair of the convention as one of them in the list, and put the equipment owner department head at the bottom.
Yeah, agreed.
No, I don't get to veto you, Allie.
Because I know there is.
I feel like honestly, like we don't need this last bullet point. Because before it says you need approval from these 5 people. So these 4 bullets and the chair. And then this just says, oh, the chair is allowed to override anything. Is kind of what this bullet point says to me. So I would just nix this whole bullet point and be like, no, you need all 5 of these people to agree to it. And then that's it.
Jeanette?
I don't know. I do worry that makes it sound more like a committee making the decision together. I do like that strong language, and I think it should be the department head.
Jeanette?
So one of the things I've been looking over the contract is I would feel more comfortable if I knew that they had a copy of their liability insurance attached with their signed contract to actually see, because I'm looking at the types of equipment you can potentially rent out, like scaffolding if someone gets hurt on their end. That's
definitely.
We've talked about insurance, so I mean, I would feel comfortable if I'm going to sign as a treasurer. I would feel comfortable, like if you're going to sign a contract, I would like to see your proof of insurance too. And obviously there'd be dates on it when it's covered, or if it covers just the event or whatever it is. But I would feel more comfortable seeing an actual certificate.
Yeah, we don't want to be sued because we rented a speaker to someone and at their event it fell over on someone else. And just because they don't have insurance.
Want to finish this part before we move on to something else.
For that part, my suggestion would be just to highlight it and have Allie and Bruce explain what they meant by that, because they might have something in their brain that they were intending it to be. And
well, my thing is, this says any final determination will be made by the department head. If we change it to that, but what if no one else wants to rent to these people? The department's like, no, I want to rent to them, but the chair doesn't, the vice chair doesn't, logistics doesn't, you know.
Right, that it would.
Why we would give one person ultimate power, like.
Right.
Okay. Ask for clarification on this bullet point.
Yes.
Okay.
Allie, did you have your hand up? You put it down again.
I did put it down again because as you guys kept talking, I'm like, no, I like this ask for clarification part. I'm good now. Thank you.
Determination is where we stopped.
Yes. Okay, so rules and determinations of the agreement. All partners are required to submit their prior year's total budget with their request. No rental request for more than 40% of a partner's prior year budget is to be approved. Primary partners are not required to submit this information, and any partner submitting a request for equipment equal or lesser in value to one they have been approved for before is not required to submit this information. I'm going to not read farther and go, I feel that the primary partner is not being required to submit this information is a no.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, if we go to the model of having everybody at ground zero, everybody would have to submit that anyway. But I'm not comfortable with automatically assuming that because previously somebody has had an okay and has been approved because their past information has been up to snuff, is an automatic yes 3 years down the line where their financial situation might have changed. I'm not going to be comfortable just automatically approving that based off of years old data. You know what I mean? Allie. Kevin, are you talking? Okay.
I'd basically put the same thing on that next point there too. A lot of cons, they'll have their situation change from year to year. Suddenly, no one saw 2020 coming and doing some pretty significant damage to a lot of events budgets. Things like that happen. Things like, excuse me, cons suddenly losing half their attendance when they come back from COVID, like happened to a lot of them, or things like a venue disappearing and they have now just, their budget's now screwed up because they have to get a different venue. That definitely has happened too, to multiple conventions that we could name. So I don't think relying on the old data is necessarily a good call either. I think we need to actually, if we do this, we have to have that data every time.
Makes sense to me. It also sounds like the rental request form is going to be really long. But
well, I mean, it's not.
That's fine.
Okay. Next bullet point. No equipment to be rented out for any period of time, including any day in the 60 days before the convention or in the 7 days after the convention. Exception to this rule may only be made by written determination by the chair of the convention, who must note in writing to the board of the organization why the exception was made. I mean, 60 days prior to the convention, 100% agree. I would even argue having longer than
30
7
days
days
after.
after the convention and have it be 7 days after post-mortem.
We can just do 30 days.
That's my thought process. But, people are
I like 30 days because it's easier than trying to figure out when the postmortem needs to be.
Yeah, I agree. I prefer 30 days because sometimes things happen where the postmortem doesn't always come about as timely as one would like.
True.
Is you know when the postmortem is going to be, so then it's like, well, how am I supposed to plan if I can rent from you or not? Whereas, we know the date of the convention.
Right.
We'll do 30 days.
So when it says no equipment, is it talking about the equipment that we're renting, or is it saying no equipment in our catalog can be rented out?
I read that as nothing in our warehouse gets rented out 60 days before the convention or, as written, 7 days after the convention.
Okay. So if there's potentially 2 conventions that wanted to rent to us, so I guess that's kind of where I'm kind of questioning, like, okay, in a 60-day.
I'm confused.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not following your question.
So basically a 60 days before the convention that we've agreed to, no other equipment can be rented out. So, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, like, what if there's another convention?
This is talking about our convention. This is talking about Anime Detour.
It doesn't say that though. So that's where I was looking at it as their convention. Actually, I'm reading it as their convention, not our. So I guess I would want to see language that actually says our Anime Detour.
It should say the event, because that was what was noted in terms and definitions at the beginning. And I think it just creatures of habit convention language was put instead of the event.
So is it our event or their event?
Something we can clarify, but context clues, I read that as our event. So
I know we meant
60
this as Anime Detour.
right,
Is what
60 days
Okay.
before Anime Detour, nothing gets rented before,
Okay.
and then nothing after Anime Detour for this amount of time can be rented.
All right. So then I guess I would want the words convention to be associated with Anime Detour. Sorry, I'm reading it very explicitly. This is where I'm like, what convention? Their
Right.
event?
So it should state the
Thank you.
event, because that's what was defined at the beginning. And it just slipped through the cracks, and it doesn't say the event. Good to go? Words are, you didn't get picked up. Got to enunciate.
Sorry. Yeah, I think we're good. I
Okay.
don't know where you left off, though. I'm
I
sorry.
do. On transfer of equipment, both parties will inspect all equipment and establish the condition of the equipment on receipt by the partner, with both parties signing a copy of the inspection report, which notes any existing damage, missing features, and parts. That makes sense to me. I don't think that needs to be adjusted at all. Partners will be granted a grace period at the end of their rental period to return the equipment, and determined by their partnership level. During this grace period, the partner is responsible for the equipment and subject to the rental agreement and this policy. At the end of this grace period, partners will accept liability for a late return fee in addition to any fees to be held against the deposit, and any equipment held for longer than 60 days after the return date, the late fee period, is considered lost or the terms of the rental agreement. So I feel like that would be a good place to put in the word verbiage that Jeanette had suggested, where we have a time within that grace period for that contract. However Jeanette phrased it, I don't remember off the top of my head. There's been a lot of words happening.
And I guess my thing is, we want to. So I guess, how are we picking the return date? And then 2 months after the return date seems real long.
Right.
Um,
So yeah, request clarification as to what that grace period will be. It should be standardized grace period. It shouldn't be a fluctuating grace period. It should be a set time frame for everybody, no matter what. Hard stop. And I don't think that the grace period should be determined by the partnership level. It should be that standard time frame, regardless of partnership level.
So I think on the 60 days, what we're saying is, if somebody's going, no, we've got it, we forgot to return it to you, but we've got it, then at 60 days we go, no, you don't, you owe us a new one. I think that's what this is. So it's not like you get 60 days. This is the like,
Sure.
no, you now owe us a new one.
I would still have some concerns about that length of timeline. Yes, we don't rent anything 60 days before the convention, but if we're renting something 70 days before the convention, now we have 10 days to replace that before detour. If we're waiting that long, I feel like that period, I feel like, shouldn't match the blackout period in length of time.
No, I agree.
5 days.
Yeah. And I mean, again, one would hope we're not going to loan out huge amounts of crucial equipment, right? I don't think we're going to do something this dumb, but I get the idea.
5 days it is.
Okay. I
Unless
am going
someone
to
really
continue
disagrees.
on unless we have more thoughts on that part. Okay. Equipment is considered to be damaged in this policy if any of the following are true. This is not considered for any damage noted in the original inspection report. Features and abilities of the equipment are no longer functional, fully usable, or accessible on return of the equipment. Equipment used in a public space is damaged in a noticeable cosmetic way. Equipment has been altered cosmetically. And then equipment is considered lost in this policy if any of the following are true. Equipment is fully non-functional for its core use. Equipment is not returned by the end of the late fee period, and equipment has been altered cosmetically or branded permanently or in a way that is irreversible without damage to the equipment. Any damage that becomes apparent at the next actual use of the equipment at the event or during the rental by another partner that was not visible at the time of return inspection will remain the responsibility of the last partner to borrow that equipment. I mean, that seems pretty straightforward.
It seems pretty fair, but at the same time, I do worry about, if we come back 3 months later, we say, hey, we found out this thing was damaged. The original people we got it from may be like, well, you can't prove we did it.
Right.
Well, and I think that's the point of why we're supposed to have the sheet where you fill it out and you go, is this damage right now? It's like when you're in a car, right? You have to go walk around it, mark all the dings, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, it sucks, but I don't think there's any better way policy-wise to do this.
Jeanette?
That's pretty much what I was looking at. I'm looking at our rental request form. So somewhere in there, we need an inspection sheet of the outbound condition, inbound condition. Somewhere in there needs to be checked in a grace period before they get their deposit back. But the whole idea of, like, if it's a speaker, who's testing it? Is that factored in with the staffing? I don't know. I'm just speaking from some experience here. Yeah. So the whole idea of where does it, like, to physically have something that was broken and now you're going to say, oh, it's from the last person who used it. Where is the checking for usability factored in here? And that's kind of where I'm like, that red bolded, that's a pretty bold putting it back on the last partner. If somewhere in there it wasn't inspected or wasn't apparent, like, I don't really know what the word apparent means. Like, if it's not fully functional, then it's not fully functional when it was returned. So
yeah, I think the main issue is, like, some of these items, like if it's a soundboard or a speaker or something, like, I don't know how easy it is to test that, like when you're in the storage locker, like taking the stuff back in, versus when you get to the convention and then it doesn't work when you hook it up to all of the other things it needs to actually run. I don't know, but I assume that that's where that difficulty lies, is we can't really test it in the storage locker.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There are going to be some items like that, and trying to figure out what all of them are ahead of time is a tough thing to do.
I mean, I like this clause, but I mean, people renting from us might not like this clause, and then I don't know how if we've already given them their deposit back, how do we do anything about it? We probably can't. Like, how enforceable is that paragraph, really? Or it just puts them into the, okay, we're not renting to you anymore then thing if you're not going to make us whole, I guess, because that's what we can do. So that's why we make sure we have good relationships with people. I think this is part of the rental business, which we're not technically in, but I know.
Okay. Okay to continue on? Okay. Partnership levels. Partnership levels would be determined by the head of convention relations, subject to the approval of the chair of the convention and specific determinations of this policy. Percentages are determined as that percent of total cost of rented equipment. And then it breaks it down by primary partner, secondary partner, and establishing partner. I'm not going to go into super fine details because we've already established that those tiers need to be adjusted. So all of that would need to get scrapped regardless.
So they have different grace periods.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah.
Like I understand going into having different things for different levels of relationship is enticing, and it encourages people to treat things better so that they get into a higher level of partnership, but at the same time it will also allow for complacency to happen, and I'm not comfortable with that. But that's definitely something that would be adjusted with the adjustment of the levels regardless.
So I
And
think go ahead, Lori.
Any tiering does definitely need to be based on something empirical, because we can't like when we talked about how many years you've been working with us, because we can't fairly apply a loosey-goosey, we like you, we don't like you.
Yep.
We think though, so we do still think we can have 2 tiers based off of what we do after this policy goes into effect.
Yes.
Would in my mind, I think the only difference should be pricing. I think grace period, late fee, all of the other stuff, all should be the same. You get a discount if we have a good relationship, but why make this so confusing? Otherwise. Does that sound
Yeah, no, that
good?
makes sense to me.
Also, it's a little silly to have like a official grace period, because the grace period is also something you give someone. So if the policy should say something harsh, and then if there's a real life situation in which it makes sense to give somebody another 3 days, we'll figure that out then.
Any timelines that we're doing, like these grace periods here, too, need to also take into account the late periods that start after them. Seeing this now, that we absolutely can't have that 60-day late period, because now that puts us where their late period could end after the convention.
This part kind of contradicts the earlier part that said they can't rent more than 60 days or less than 60 days before the convention, because this is oh, you can rent 14 days before the convention. It's no, we don't like that. I don't think we like that at all.
Yeah, that can all go away too. But also this whole thing of just the chance that something could be still lost when the convention's happening, when we who purchased the equipment now need our own equipment.
Yeah. And
no one hasn't given it back to us yet.
I don't think it was really ever meant to work that way, and certainly we can make sure that it does not work that way.
Jeanette.
So one thing to kind of always keep in the back of your mind too with this is that when you're creating the contract with a person, a picture, you're creating the period of time, the date that you're picking it up. You're creating a grace period of when you're dropping it off or when you agree to drop it off. And then you also have staffing that you have to also factor into that. So the whole idea that if we create these grace periods, or I just want to keep in the back of your mind that, yeah, because we're not a rental business, there's not someone living at that storage unit. There's always going to be that, okay, whose schedule are we looking at now that has to check the equipment back in, go to the locker, all that kind of stuff. So just as we're creating these tiers and this grace period, that's also part of the agreement that we're creating between you're picking something up and renting it from us. You're contracted to bring it back to us at a certain date. You may have a grace period of so many days to do it, and then we start charging a late fee. And then who is going to be that person to check it back in? So I think that's something that as I'm listening to all this, I'm like, who's going to be at that locker to pick it up or be there and scheduled for that? So that's something I want to keep people aware of.
Cleared my comment, so I gotta retake it.
You're fine. That was basically the end of it anyway, because the very last bottom part is just what equipment is generally potentially going to be part of this rental pool. And then the rental request form that was whipped up. Jeanette.
One thing I was just wondering is who updates the value, or whose department will that fall onto to keep the value of the equipment like current
To
or
be on the department head, and they're
Yeah.
supposed to send it to the treasurer
okay.
annually.
In
But-
theory,
Okay.
we already do that with inventory. I do think we're behind, but yeah.
Okay. So
Merchandise does it every year.
is it done annually? Is it, so it's a department head going through the list every few years? Is there a timeline? Is it written somewhere? Like, because I mean, if I were to Google, like, oh, how much does this speaker cost or something, what would I find for that piece of equipment, and what website are you using, or, how are we evaluating equipment? I'm just wondering if, like, if we're pricing
Right.
correctly.
Yeah, no, I think that's something to definitely ask and say, was there a thought process to how you were going to value the equipment for the deposit and what have you? Because it isn't listed in this policy. So
Do a quick Google, and it does seem like for audio and lighting equipment, percentage of value is somewhat standard. But yeah, how do we determine that? Is it replacement value for if we have to get a new one? Is it how much we paid for it? Or is it how much that item is worth if we were to sell it? Which I don't know.
I mean, in my brain, replacement value
Yeah.
would be the most beneficial because, I mean,
But is that what you would track for insurance purposes?
it's a good
Do
question.
you know that?
I
Do you
don't
know,
know.
Jeanette?
No, I don't have my source to ask at the
Yeah,
moment.
that's I just was like I'm trying to remember like what Kim said 500 years ago when it was like our insurance needs to know how much all the stuff in our locker is, and I'm like, okay, I will make some educated guesses for you.
$20 million.
It looks like someone in the YouTube chat did put like the replacement value is generally what they pay for it. So
Okay. So I feel like we have finally gathered a lot of feedback on this form. Took us a while. Um, and we can send that back to Cass and keep working on it.
Yeah, second
Does
draft.
that sound good?
Yeah.
Yep.
Send back
Okay.
feedback. We can get back a second draft, and then go from there. Productivity, yay, Jeanette.
is there a noted to create some type of form that has like a outbound condition, inbound something for initials, something check mark?
Yes,
I
at the
don't know.
bottom of the form, there's a rental agreement template.
Yes, but then maybe add a column, add something. At no point does there ever an outbound and an inbound condition. Someone on the outbound checking, what am I picking up? Oh, I'm picking up a bag, I'm picking up a speaker, I'm picking up the stand. Like what comes back? Oh, you are missing the bag or something. That's the part where I'm like, it just the form either needs to be revised or there physically needs to be an inspection form. So that's just my suggestion.
Talked about an inspection form earlier in the policy. I just don't think we have one on here, but yeah.
Yes, just to make note of if we're going to send it back to people, here you go. Figure out a way to do a check-in and check-out.
And so that, and going back to what you had said earlier about, testing equipment. Well, if the person that's meeting the person at the locker is just the head of logistics saying, okay, here you have returned all of the things, and they look okay, nothing looks broken, but then logistics doesn't know how to use the soundboard or the mixer or anything.
My own thought is that we, whatever grace period we decide they have to give us the stuff back, we then get 3 weeks after it is returned to do our inspection, because the person who picks it up is not necessarily the person who can inspect it.
That makes sense to me.
And if we don't inspect it in that time, then that's on us. And then we don't run into a situation where, say, we rent it out to another con and they're like, hey, this is broken. And now we go back to the first con and we say, hey, second con says it's broken. And first con goes, no,
That's when we screwed up.
That was the last thing on the agenda. Well, okay, I guess it's open session. Yay! Does anyone that has stayed in our chat for this whole time have anything they wish to bring to the board? I will give you 1 minute. We can maybe give you a little bit longer than 1 minute.
We can give them a little bit longer than just a minute, Christina.
You have 1 minute to say that you have an issue. You then have a grace period of 30 seconds on that 1 minute. Once you've entered that,
what it is.
I was going to say we need a little longer than a minute because we're laggy. We're not. What we see is not what they're seeing.
Has anyone else watched K-pop Demon Hunters on Netflix?
Of course.
I figured you would have.
When
I saw like the 50th meme from it on Facebook, I was like, I guess I need to watch this movie, and it was very
so
cute.
good.
I liked it. I want a
Movie?
cat puppy. Yeah.
Oh, that's easier. Okay, I can catch up on that.
Yep.
JC, if you need recommendations, go to Buttons. She will gladly spew all of her love for this movie.
I'm kind of amazed she hasn't already. But, yeah.
Now I'm like inundated with fan art. Every I scroll 5 lines and they're like, here's 20 more fan arts from this show, and I'm like, all right.
Well, after Convergence, it's like the list is it's so bad now. It's always.
I have stuff for Buttons on my 3D printer behind me. So
I also went to trailers in Cinema Rex at Convergence, which is literally just an hour of trailers for upcoming things. And I'm like, good Lord, I'm clearly out of the loop on movies coming out because there's a lot of stuff that looks really good, especially Running Man remake directed by Edgar Wright. Oh my God. I'm gonna see the crap out of that, which means I'm actually gonna go to the theater, which I do like twice a year now.
Those couches in there sure are comfy, though.
They are.
Nice place to hang out.
I want to talk to them and see if that's a thing we can do. I still don't know if it's a thing we can do just because space-wise, but like, I want to find out.
On Facebook, though, they keep the couches at the hotel all year. So
yeah, they started doing that. They contracted with the site to have some of their storage space on site.
And I was like, how do we get some storage space at the hotel? I don't know that it would actually do us any good, but like,
yeah,
would I rather drive downtown than out to the middle of nowhere? I'm not sure. I hate going to storage locker right now, but then
I would because I already have contract parking downtown.
Okay, well, there you go.
Parking.
It is
okay.
A bit of a hike to the Regency, but you know, not that bad.
We do not see anything coming in for open session. We were thanked for our thrilling contract discussion because it's very exciting. Okay, so with that, I will go ahead and call the meeting to its conclusion as of 8:14 p.m. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you in a month. And some of you sooner than that.
Yay!
Bye.
Bye.
Spirit